an eye on this. Now we're ready to go.
All right, we'll start all over. I'd like to call to order the regular Oregon City City Commission meeting for February 16th, 2022. Mr. Wiley, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell. Here. Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith. Here. And Commissioner Adam Marl. Here. And Mayor Rachel Lau Smith is absent today.
All right, shall we all stand for the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. So we do not have any ceremonies and proclamations, but again, I will welcome everyone who is here tonight in the commission chambers and to our friends in video land. Thank you for attending the meeting. We certainly appreciate it, and we're all happy that you are here. So we have one citizen comment. Would you like to come forward, Karen, and state your name and city of your address for the record? Don't have to give your address.
Difficult to hear what you're saying. I apologize for not responding more promptly.
You're fine.
So my name is Karen Blaha, and I live in Oregon City. Tonight, I bring you a proclamation from last night's meeting of the Police Advisory Group. This large advisory group, of which I am a member, is comprised of wide and various sectors of our great city. The proclamation, initiated solely by the members, reads as follows, and I have copies for the Whereas the City Commission at its January 19, 2022 meeting deliberated the question of monetary awards for city employees who exhibited outstanding service during the COVID pandemic, and whereas it is agreed that many, if not most, did perform outstanding service, the advisory board to Oregon City Chief of Police strongly underscores the point of view that Oregon City officers are a different category of city employee, in that they are not only essential workers, they are frequently endangered workers. During the past 2 years, as the nature of service calls became more acute, the risk levels increased dramatically, including exposure to COVID through multiple contacts with persons already infected or contagious. Exposure levels that other employees, while essential, did not suffer. This is in addition to officers' regularly expected standard of performance, where it is likely that they will see some of life's worst horrors that they can never unsee, and hear some of life's worst sounds that they can never unhear. Yet we expect them to readily go home to their families and friends, to a routine, traditional life. Therefore, this advisory board requests that should monetary awards be put in place, Oregon City Police stand first. And I thank you very much for hearing me and representing the advisory board. Thank you.
Very much. Chief Band, I have a question for you. So my recollection is that the Chief's Advisory Board is both fire and police. Did it change?
It is. It's both.
It's still, okay.
Yep.
But it seems to be primarily Oregon City Police who organize it, conduct it, do all of the work that it takes to make it function. And just new news from last night's meeting and other new news, we now have a new chair Angela Wright, who is representing the Gaffney Neighborhood Association.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, next on our docket is, we don't have any presentations tonight, do we, Mr. Conkle? Adoption of the agenda, and we have, well, 8 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull from the agenda? Not. Okay, well then I will, I'd like to take 8A off. I think there's further discussion that is warranted for this particular item.
You mean 7A?
Excuse me, 7A. So we can put that under general business, or depending on, well, hopefully, well, we don't know how long 8A is going to go, so it'll be under general business. Is that all right with everyone else?
Yep.
So we need a motion to adopt the remainder of the consent agenda, unless there are any questions.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
For a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Smith and seconded by Morrow that we approve the consent agenda. And may I say that I thought 7B was very well written, very thorough, and I really appreciate the detail. So, Mr. Wiley, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
And Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
All right.
Motion passes.
Okay, well, we are like trucking along here ahead of schedule. So on our agenda tonight, we have one public hearing. Item 8A, this is an appeal from a historic review board approval. Ms. Richter, since I do not have the item here in front of me to read, and I don't have it memorized anymore, I was looking forward to using the word specificity because it is one of my favorite words. Would you go ahead and read that, and then I will ask for any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest of any sort. So we'll start with that first.
Thank you, Commission President McGriff. Tonight, the City Commission will hold a public hearing on a land use appeal from the Historic Review Board. City Commission's role is to review the record of the proceeding before the Historic Review Board, the appeal documents, and conduct a public hearing considering solely the evidence already in the record. In making this decision, the Commission must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. The staff report has been prepared for this application and has been made available to the public 7 days before today. Staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to this appeal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the Commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps we will follow tonight will be staff report, 10 minutes, applicant testimony, 10 minutes, others who participated during the proceeding before the Historic Review Board, 5 minutes for recognized neighborhood association or CIC, and 3 minutes for individuals. And then the appellant will have a 5-minute rebuttal. As noted, the City Commission's review of this type of matter is limited to only those individuals who participated orally or in writing before the HRB. 2, only to those issues that have been raised in the notice of appeal. And 3, the only evidence that the Commission may consider is that presented to the HRB. No new evidence is allowed. Anyone who participated below wishing to speak in this appeal should either email the city recorder in advance of this hearing or raise their hand when the Commission President identifies the appropriate time for public testimony. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name and city of residence. If you would like to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please state your mailing address or email address. Testimony should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria, again, limited to the issues raised in the notice of appeal. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the appeal under consideration. Any person may submit written material while the public record is open, so long as it does not contain any new evidence. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record and before the city commission for consideration. If the city commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised before the Historic Review Board. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties, so that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Do you want me to do the ex parte contact discussion, or would you prefer to do it, Commissioner President?
Either way, you know that I know it.
Well, members of the city commission are to be unbiased. Do any of the commissioners believe that they are biased or have any potential conflicts of interest, such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants with regard to this property or the proposal in question?
I do not.
I do not.
No.
Thank you. Have any commissioners discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have any independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as a visit to the site in question?
I frequently drive by it. I stopped on the public street and I observed it for purposes of clarifying the 14 documents that are in this review.
Carl?
I drive by it frequently as well, but I have not purposefully stopped by it for a site visit.
And I drive by it every day as well.
I drive by it on a fairly regular basis. I was at an historic review board meeting on another item relating to a membrane roof and was sitting in the audience when part of the application for this came up. I did not participate in that hearing other than listening, and I went back and reviewed all the supplemental information that staff had provided to us. In addition to driving by this on a regular basis, I do live in the Mclaughlin neighborhood, and I'm aware that it has been before the neighborhood association on several occasions, but I have not participated other than the participation here tonight. Prior to when I was on the commission, I did participate in a hearing regarding this applicant, but it was another property, not.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to question the commissioners about these disclosures?
I do have a question for Mr. Wiley. Prior to the meeting, I received information from the chair of the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association, said that he was going to be requesting entry to the meeting and wanted to make sure that I asked you that to make sure he was available. So I couldn't tell whether he's on there or not. So
Yes,
Okay,
he's already entered the meeting.
And did we receive any correspondence?
The only thing I received was a request for the Zoom link, which I provided.
The only reason I asked is that through a text that I saw on my watch, it was from one of the parties who could not be here this evening, and I don't know how. I just assumed that was being sent to you.
I haven't received it. Our normal process for requesting the Zoom link is via email. The only email I've received is from the Mclaughlin neighborhood.
On my watch, it's probably
Commissioner President McGriff, I will be entering into the record a letter from the neighbor who does have standing this evening.
the neighborhood.
The neighbor who has standing, I will be entering in the
Okay.
record an email.
Does it start with greetings to the Oregon City Commission? make sure that's the thing. I got it. Okay, all right. Got it. I can delete it. Thank you. Okay, are we ready for the staff report? So we have Hrb here as our interim community development director, and we have Christina Robertson-Gardner, who is our senior planner, and I will just leave it in your capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission President and Commission. I am going to turn it over to Christina Robertson-Gardner, who will introduce this and give you a brief presentation.
Okay, so give me a moment. I did not open the public hearing.
Okay.
Let me open the public hearing. And as was outlined by our city attorney, Carrie Richter, the hearing procedure for, obviously the people are not in the room. So when we get to each person who wishes to testify, just make sure you say your name and city of residence for the record, and we'll go from there. So thank you, Christina. Sorry.
No problem. So this is the appeal of, this is HR 2106, which is a Historic Review Board appeal of approval of a refined ADA ramp, GLUA 2152, HR 2120, which was a modification of a previous Historic Review Board approval. Let me work on my slide.
There's a slider to turn it on.
Yeah, we're getting a little tiny bit of feedback, but
There we go. So I do have one item to enter in the record this evening. This is an email from Jylene Mclaughlin, who is a neighbor of the property and has some of the items she put in the email. She asked why residential ADA accommodations used on this residential building. Why were these issues not addressed at the start of the project raised after the building completion? And that the owner's submission continues to be incomplete, not answer the question raised. That email was sent to you early this afternoon by and is now in the record. So this is an appeal of modifications to HR 2020-01, which was for the approval of a new live-work building in the Mclaughlin Conservation District. The Historic Review Board spent this fall and winter reviewing an option for an ADA ramp, looked at proposed window revisions as well as the revised foundation height. The Historic Review Board denied the request for a full ADA ramp to the rear of the site. They approved with conditions a shorter ADA ramp to the side door, and they approved window elevation revisions and the revised foundation height with finding. So what is not part of the appeal tonight is the last portion. What is on appeal tonight is the request for a larger ADA ramp. During the deliberations of this application, the board found that the applicant had failed to provide an adequate alternatives analysis to demonstrate that the larger ramp, that access to the rear of the building was the only feasible option. The board also found that the applicant failed to provide sufficient findings to demonstrate that the design was compatible with the district. They additionally found that the larger rear access ramp design further erodes the 4-square architecture design of the building by length of mass an additional 19 feet. So this appeal is limited to, as Carrie Richter, our assistant city attorney, indicated, the arguments related solely to the rear ramp request and nothing else. Only those parties who testified before the HRB may be heard this evening. And no new evidence, facts beyond those presented during the HRB review may be. When we have an appeal, there is often a point where staff may need to let the city commission know that new evidence has been brought up at a hearing. So I do ask every time parties speak, you allow staff time to review what they presented and let the commission know if there are any new evidence or facts or arguments brought into the record this evening. Any new evidence or arguments will be identified and removed from the record and will not be part of deliberation. In this situation, the applicant is the appellant this evening. A neighbor and the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association both have input this evening. So, the appeal statement by the applicant. The applicant appeals includes a singular statement as the basis for seeking review. Quote, the Historic Review Board decision does not meet the owner's family medical care needs, also the applicable federal ADA standards. Thank you. And then cites Federal ADA Act, mobility impairments requiring the use of a wheelchair. So the City Commission review is limited again to the single issue, a request to allow the proposed extended rear ramp to serve the second-story residence through the ADA. The impact of the ADA is a new issue raised for the first time in this appeal and therefore requires the Commission to reweigh the evidence to determine if the appellant has shown that the proposed ramp adequately responds to and protects the significance of the Mclaughlin Conservation District as the only viable alternative. The question for the Commission is whether this design proposal appropriately balances ADA accessibility and the Mclaughlin Conservation District protection. Providing access for a wheelchair is an accommodation contemplated by the ADA, but that fact alone is inadequate to justify the proposed ramp design and configuration without further analysis on its impact to the significance of the Mclaughlin Conservation District. Unfortunately, so the site is located at the edge of the Mclaughlin Conservation District on 5th Street near unbuilt John Adams Street. This is a street view from prior to construction. The site is located generally where the blue arrow is located. The structure originally approved by the Historic Review Board in 2020 was file HR 2001 and was approved as a live-work building that allocated a commercial area in the front half of the ground floor and a 10-bedroom residence on the second and third floors of the structure. The main entry for the commercial space is located in the center of the ground floor porch, accessed from 5th Street. The residential portion of the building is on the second and third floors and is accessed through an internal stairway from the side door on the south elevation. You'll see on these plans that the original side door entrance was at grade, which actually is not typical for a four-square, and that was one of the reasons why the Historic Review Board allowed the alteration with the revised foundation height. And you'll notice on the rear elevation, it showed rear stairs heading down to grade. So that is a little bit different. And in a few slides, I will show you it shows existing conditions. Subsequently, from the Historic Review Board proposal and approval, the proposed development was reviewed for compliance with the Geologic Hazard Overlay District. The site is cross-sloped with elevation dropping from the rear and the top front to the site. The Geohazard Review and HR 20-01 conditions of approval directed the applicant to minimize cuts and fills, which resulted in an exposed foundation approximately 4 feet taller at the south side door entrance at the finished grade on the downhill side that was reflected on their original plans. Therefore, the applicant came back to the Historic Review Board when the ADA ramp was denied as part of the building permit approval. And we're looking for an alternate approach to access the second and third floors. At the September Hrb meeting, the applicant submitted some initial drawings that did not meet ADA standards. Those can be found in Exhibit A of your packet. What you see before you are the revised plans that the board used as part of their deliberations and decisions. The applicant submitted a revised plan for consideration by the Historic Review Board at its October 26th meeting and further refined it at the November 30th meeting. These plans reduced the slope of the ramp and removed the rear stairs to satisfy the ADA, significantly increased the length of the ramp, thereby requiring the incorporation of switchback to reach the second floor. At the hearing on November 30th, the Historic Review Board reviewed the additional material. And they found that the applicant focused largely, at the hearing, the applicant focused largely on the mathematical calculations dictating the overall ramp length, arguing that these demands alone justify the ramp's location and design. The applicant's representative testified that the proposed ramp offered the most effective cost solution. When asked about the consideration of internal alternatives, the applicant responded that the cost of installing a commercial elevator would be over $100,000. With respect to mitigation, the applicant representative testified that the ramp is at the rear of the structure and would not be visible from the street. In deliberation, the Historic Review Board discussed the fixed nature of the ramp requirements and saw no indication that materials or design detailing necessary to achieve compatibility or other mitigation was considered. They questioned why the applicant did not consider employing any form of internal accommodation, such as a residential style ADA chair or lift. Thereby, the Hrb concluded that the applicant failed to provide analysis to show that the larger ramp as designed was necessary. Without necessity and or sufficient mitigation, the board found that the applicant failed to demonstrate that the proposed design would contribute to the character of the district. Lengthening the overall form by an additional 19 feet compromised the boxy square form that was an essential element of the 4-square style approved in the original HR 2001. The board also found that the applicant did not address the applicable design standards in Oregon City Municipal Code and did not offer any detailed explanation for why other less character impacting alternatives, such as a residential elevator or chairlift, using the existing internal staircase was not feasible. I provided some site photos that are in the record showing the site at different times in the process. The left is an August 2021 photo, and we have a November 2021 photo, which was submitted by the applicant, and is showing the side rear elevation. This is a site condition from November 2021, which shows the rear of the second floor as it goes out to on grade in the rear backyard. You can see it kind of straight on as well as on the side profile.
What is the material of, you've got the two pictures, the one on the right and one on the left. So what is that material?
On the building or the
wall?
Yeah, it's a concrete retaining wall that was built as part
concrete.
of the foundation and is reviewed during the geotechnical
So the
review.
one on my right, that's there, that's concrete wall?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that is what the applicant proposes to utilize for the foundation of the ADA ramp.
Wait, oh, there'll be a structure placed on top of that? Will it serve as a footing and foundation?
As far as I know, there were I don't want to get too out of the record, but that was the initial intent of the applicant.
Okay.
So when considering modifying buildings to accommodate ADA, we do have some guidance. Preservation Brief 32, which is created by the National Park Service to guide property owners and communities for historic resources, does have two nice guides. One, the original 1990s version, as well as the updated web version. Those are exhibits in your packet. While this is not an historic building, reading through the guidelines can help provide additional guidance when thinking through the balance of ADA accessibility and historic preservation. So the Preservation Brief asks to identify the character-defining features of the resource, identify the required level of accessibility, and evaluate accessibility options with a preservation context. It goes on to say that ramps should be carefully designed and appropriately located to preserve a property's historic character. Ramps should be located preferably where there is minimal change in grade, and often the type and quality of the materials determines how compatible a ramp design will be with an historic property. There is no comment currently from the State Historic Preservation Office or the Park Service in the record, but these two preservation briefs are in the record. Although the preservation brief is focused on increasing accessibility for historic structures, The brief recommends identifying a solution that provides the greatest amount of accessibility without threatening or destroying those materials and features that make a property significant. In our case, the effective resource is the Mclaughlin Conservation District as a whole. So rather than looking at how an ADA ramp affects an active structure, if this wasn't a historic resource, we're looking at how the ADA ramp affects the specific Mclaughlin whole as its own entity. So the commission has some options this evening, and I'm going to go through each option, and I have a slide option. We can go back and deliberate as we get into details, and I'll have these available for you. Option 1 this evening is to deny the appeal and affirm the Historic Review Board's decision with additional findings responding to the arguments presented on appeal. Option 2, remand the matter to the Historic Review Board to consider evidence regarding alternative ADA accommodations that would, at the same time, not distract from the character of the conservation district. This option will require extending or waiving the 120-day limit. Currently, the 120-day deadline is March 18th, and that can be extended as far as August 31st, 2022, which is the furthest you can extend it for 1 year. And the applicant is ready to, when they speak, is ready to speak to that request. Option 3, approve the appeal and revise the HRB approval to allow the rear ramp, perhaps with additional conditions of approval that might provide adequate screening through the landscaping or other mitigation. I'm briefly going to go through those 3 options. Option 1, denying the appeal. The commission may hold the Historic Review Board's decision because the appellant has failed to respond to the historic overlay requirement and or establish a recognizable claim for relief under the ADA and deny the appeal. This will require drafting additional findings, responding to any additional argument presented at the hearing, and we will present them after the motion, we would present them at a future for adoption. The next option, option 2, if the applicant is willing to extend or waive the 120-day rule, the following is a list of alternatives the commission might include the Historic Review Board's consideration on remand. If the commission chooses this option, you could choose one or all of these that you request the applicant investigate and present to the Historic Review Board at a remand hearing to really look at the alternatives analysis that would be required to make findings showing the correct and the ADA option. Option 3, uphold the appeal and overturn the HRB. This option, you would make the decision based on the evidence on the record, and the City Commission might conclude that the proposed ramp does not dilute or distract from the historic context of the district because A, the subject modification seeks to provide greater accessibility, a value recognized and protected under the ADA. The subject structure is new construction rather than historic structure, and or that the structure is located at the edge of the district and is not surrounded by any contributing historic buildings. Additional mitigation in the form of conditions of approval might be included to add landscaping, screening, or maintenance obligations, or changes in the ramp material or design. In this option, the commission would make a tentative decision upholding the appeal, and staff would draft findings and present them for adoption by the commission at a subsequent meeting. And I have a final slide that provides those options. Again, I'm available for any questions as well as Ms.
Are there any questions?
I have one. The applicant or appellant refers to ADA ramp specification, yet if I read it correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they cite the ADA ramp, which requires a 1 in 12 slope, rise over run, yet they want to install a 1 in 10 slope, steeper. Did I read that correctly?
That was one option that we're looking at to potentially reduce the amount of switchbacks that we did. The Historic Review Board did not see that revised.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble
Sure.
hearing you through the mask.
There was a potential to present a revised drawing with the slope you indicated that would create less switchbacks. but that was not pursued by the applicant, and the board did not see the revised design for that.
Say that one more time.
Sure. There was a discussion at the Historic Review Board with an option for a different slope on the ramp, which would reduce the amount of switchbacks. That was not, the revised design was not presented to the board, and the board did not see that design. So what the design that the board saw was the originally proposed, the proposed ramp that met the ADA slope standard.
Okay, so paraphrasing, so there was a request to say you could submit a revision showing the ramp that meets that requirement.
There was a request by the board to ask if why there were so many switchbacks. One option would be to change the slope. That was not pursued any further by the applicant.
So we're not going to listen to any new evidence, but we are going to listen to arguments presented on the basis of existing evidence. Okay. Trying to draw that distinction.
Yes, and we're only going to talk about the singular issue on appeal, which is the ramp.
Well, I have a couple of questions. So it was indicated in the report and in your oral presentation that the original plans, which I believe showed in one of the first slides, did not have any mention of an ADA ramp whatsoever. And then the first indication that the city had that there was a possible ramp was when the building plans were submitted. So I'm assuming with the chicken and egg theory, the HRB material came first, and then sometime subsequent to that, the building plans were submitted.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm trying to, you did a really good job with the timeline. I'm just trying to understand from listening to all the videos and seeing the videos, it was kind of hard to figure out what the timeline a little bit.
The board approved a proposal initially that did not have an ADA ramp. The ADA ramp was designed later on in the process and was not approved in the building permit process because it had not been reviewed by the Historic Review.
Okay. Then my second question involves in your oral testimony, and I was looking forward to see if it was in the written part. It probably is, but I just couldn't find it. You mentioned that as a result of the geotechnical report, which I believe you referred to as 20002, there was information submitted, and this relates to the ramp, regarding the cross slope. And there was there an error or something that didn't match up from what was submitted to what was presented with the ramp?
The geotechnical review recommended, use the word correctly, they recommended to reduce any cuts, as much cuts and fill as possible.
Okay.
And that resulted in a slightly higher foundation.
Okay. So the geotech report recommended that minimizing cut and fills with those two slopes going in kind of two different directions. And that, I'm trying to get it in my head. So, and that resulted in a higher slope than what would have been presented at the Historic Review Board.
Correct. The lowest point is at that corner of the house where the ADA ramp touches the right. It's right at the front porch. Really, is the.
Do we have something that shows that, that point?
See.
It might be one of the side views.
If the side views were side by side, that would be feeling, I think.
Sure. So just to real quickly, the low point of the whole site is right where that star is.
Oh, where the star is.
Keep that in mind for a second.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go to. This is the what the board approved in November. I'm going to scroll back to what was approved in 2020. So you'll see it as slightly. As in the 2020 version, it has them kind of dug into the hillside a little bit.
Okay, so this is leading me to a conclusion that this was designed before they got their geotechnical information.
I don't want to,
So, I mean, I'm speculating, so I'm just saying it seems like,
there's always refinement as you move.
right, there's always refinements, yeah. Okay. All right, I think I'm I'm making notes here on your paper about the timeline, and that's critical.
Well,
Go ahead.
if you go back to that slide, I just want to work my way through this quickly. Side view, please.
Oh, this one right here or the the architectural
No,
side view?
Go back.
Elevation.
Side elevation.
This one right here?
One more time.
Is this the original or the revised?
One more back. No.
This one.
So that was as proposed. That was
Correct.
as drawn and as submitted. And was that approved?
That was approved in the spring of.
Okay, so then if I go forward to the next slide, same elevation view from the side, was that ever approved?
That was the revised version that the Historic Review Board approved this November, which included revisions to windows, revisions to the foundation height, and the smaller ADA.
But are we looking at a ramp there that goes past that side door?
Correct. So if you see the ramp, it was designed by the applicant to mimic the siding of the house as a way to potentially hide it, but it is a siding, basically a fully sided. So if you looked at it from the outside, you would see the siding of the house.
Yeah.
From the inside, you would have the railing on the inside as you walk up the door.
Does that slope conform to ADA requirements?
I don't know if I can comment on that because it hasn't gone to building permit.
Well, basically what an as-drawn versus an as-built, that
This is a drawn proposal that the board adopted. They have not submitted this ADA
Okay.
ramp to the building department.
So can you take the pointer and show from one edge to the other edge? Because it looks like it's okay. Okay, that whole long thing.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go in?
So the board approved the ADA ramp. You would start near the front porch. The board required the railing to start past the front porch at the building corner. So the railing of the ADA ramp starts there. It moves up.
Okay, so where's Fifth?
Fifth Street
on the
is
left-hand side of it.
It's on the left-hand side by the porch?
it's on the left-hand side.
Okay,
Yeah.
Fifth Street is there.
Yep.
So that's that sloping driveway.
This is Fifth Street itself, right? You're going up and down Fifth Street.
Okay,
So you would start the AD ramp up here. The board basically approved it to here. The applicant is requesting it continue and then to obtain the switchbacks to get it up to the second floor.
so it's proposed to go from where you were by the
Mhm.
post
Mhm.
all the way to,
Yep. To the at-grade rear entry. And I will show the site plan again and we'll follow, if Lisa could help me, we'll follow that same path. So we would start at Fifth Street where those two zeros go up the ramp. The board approved it. If you want to go to the side door and stop right at the side door, that's what the board approved it to.
okay,
The applicant is requesting it continue up, go up the switchback,
goodness.
and then to have access to the rear door, which you saw in the photo, which is at grade on the floor, the rear of the building.
Wow, okay. That was not clear. Okay, I'm sure there'll be more questions later. Are there any further questions of staff or for our city attorney? All right, so let's hear from the applicant. And I'm assuming they're not here, so they must be online. So John, before you start, would you do a little test? Because I know last time there was trouble here. It was hard to hear you on the tape, the video.
Yes, can you hear me?
So go test.
Okay.
Say test, test.
Test.
Okay, can everybody hear him? Okay, good. So would you please give your name and city of residence for the record?
Yes, before I start, we have the owner of the building, and my understanding is she would like to participate and have like one or 2 minutes to present her information. I was thinking maybe it would be more appropriate she goes first, and then I will go with more technical explanations.
Okay, can you hold on just a moment, please?
Okay.
Well, yes, I know, but she hasn't been technically a party to this, so is she submitted comment? You might have to take your mask off when you're speaking.
I turned my mic off. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay, that's all right. I
I
forget
was
to turn
trying not
mine
to
off.
type in sound of the mic, so I apologize.
Yeah, okay. So they have 10 minutes, correct?
Correct.
And I will be, got 15 on mine. Do they have 10 or 15?
It's up to the commission. I had said 10. I think on the wall, I can't see that far. Maybe it says,
Says 15 for applicant.
we'll go with 15.
Okay, all right. Well, I will be keeping track of the time, as will staff. So go ahead, John.
So again, is
John, you need to say your name and city of residence for the record.
It was gonna happen.
John Delson Engineering, Vancouver, Washington. We're based from Vancouver, Washington. But my question was if the owner will be allowed to talk, and she has 1 or 2 minutes part.
Yes, that's part of your time. Yes.
Okay, so maybe she can say what the information she.
Yeah, however you want it.
Okay.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes. So your name
Okay.
and
Yeah.
city of residence for the record.
Okay, my name is Tracy Ye, and I'm the owner of the new house over in 1025th Avenue. And I just wanted to participate because I need your help. I wanted to sincerely request that you guys approve the ramp because I'll be living with my elderly mother and some elderly, my brothers too. So this ramp is necessary because my mother's condition that she cannot climb steps, okay? So my mother's gonna live with me for the rest of her life. And this new home is the only solution to bring my family together. And honestly, I really need your support and your approval to help me through this critical kind of situation. I am pretty sure that I'm confident that my engineers and my builder and my contractor, they will follow all your rules and regulation. And so just want to get your assistance, that's it. And I appreciate all your help. And John, you could take over.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, so I don't know if I can talk right now. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So it came to my attention last year when the project was already permitted and in construction. We learned about the situation of Teresa, the owner, and she requested that we provide a solution so she can provide for for her mother and brother assistance. And when looking at the options of egress from the house in case of emergency, at that stage we could not find any other option except ADA ramp. Now I understand that in large hospitals, they have different solutions with multiple elevators and things like that. But for single family residents, the most common 100% solution is the ADA ramp. And when doing research, I found out that actually by any standards, any building code, the ADA is required in such family situation when the person needs assistance and needs to go on a wheelchair or something like that. And then in critical conditions. And also, why not elevator? Because the building is already built. The site has super difficult access due to topography, existing topography. And so researching this, I found out, of course, that the elevator cannot be used in case of earthquake, fire, windstorm, or power shortage. So the elevator or lift chair is out of the picture. Why? On every building, in every state, in any jurisdiction, in any elevator, you see the sign, do not use in case of earthquake, fire, other disaster. So we know situations that in Oregon and Washington, people had to live without power and electrical energy for a week or multiple weeks. So what if she takes care of the elderly mother and she finds herself strangled in the house? Okay, we need to go to emergency. But I'm sorry, my mother, okay, we don't have power. So we have to wait until they switch on that.
Hey, I need to stop you for a minute because you're bringing in new evidence that was not part of the record. I'm sorry, I'm John. I have to stop you just for a minute here. Staff.
Here, just give us 1 second.
John, I need you to stop. Stop. We're stopping the timer. So stop, please.
So I believe that the testimony that has been submitted so far that I have as being new is that an ADA ramp is the most common accessibility feature for a residence, or that it is most often used, and that and why not an elevator? Because of the existing topography, that is a new fact, I believe, and that an elevator is not usable for in the case of an emergency. So those are new facts that the commission will not consider in its deliberation. And the appellant, I urge you to stick with the material that's in the record presented to the Historic Review Board. We cannot consider any new facts as part of this review.
Okay, well, I did talk about this.
Do you understand that, John? I'm not starting the timer, so do you understand what she said?
Yes, I do, but I stated this coming from the ground that this is common knowledge and understanding that elevators are not...
John, you cannot bring in new evidence that was not previously presented at this hearing. The record is closed. We cannot consider that at all. You have to stick to the information in the staff report and what you previously submitted. So do you have the staff report that you can refer to?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going to have to keep cutting you off if you keep bringing in new evidence that we cannot consider.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry, but...
Yeah, that's okay.
In my mind, this is not a new evidence. It's just elaborating, explaining my point, which I stated before.
Unfortunately, it is new evidence. You had an opportunity at the Historic Review Board to bring that information to them. We can't consider it. The record is closed.
Okay. As I said, when I stated the elevator is not an option, I understood that everybody's on the same page. Apparently, this is not the case. So I'm explaining why. I'm not telling something new. Okay?
Yes, unfortunately, it is. Again, I'm sorry to have to stop you, but it is new information. You may think that you're presenting an explanation of what your statement is, but it's bringing in new information that was not presented at the previous hearings. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, the situation is that, okay, I had 15 minutes, okay, I presented the case to the best of my knowledge, but I didn't know that the points that I presented are not understood and cannot be followed. So if I had a chance, oh, by the way, why did you say that elevator is an option? Then I would elaborate on this, of course. But there was never a question like this. So now after 2 months, I have the same situation that if I say something, I don't know if it is understood or not and why it's not understood.
No, we're
So
not saying that we don't understand what you're saying. We're saying that you cannot present new evidence that wasn't presented at the Historic Review Board level. That's what we're saying. We understand what you're saying. That's why we're telling you we cannot talk about that.
Well, and I don't know what we should talk about. I don't know if there's any other questions that I can answer. But definitely we have, according to my research and the supporting evidence, as I stated before, elevator is not an option for multiple reasons. It's cost prohibitive, but also because of this reason that I just mentioned.
Hey, John, you're still doing it. We're going to have to pause again.
So far, I think what he has said in the record.
Hang on just a second. We have to talk to the attorney and our staff. Just a minute.
So what I've heard in this conversation, the applicant appellant did talk about the expensive nature of the elevator, a commercial elevator. The applicant did feel that he provided that information to our review board, but information related, as I said, to the ADA ramp being the common option for single-family residents and the emergency issue is new. But the applicant did talk about the expensive of an elevator at the
The testimony that applicant gave at the Historic Review Board was that a commercial elevator was cost prohibitive. And then I believe that one of the HRB members said, well, what about a residential elevator? And I don't believe that any evidence about residential elevator was done.
Okay.
Having read the reports, I agree with that summation.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start the clock.
Okay, so when talking to Oregon State Preservation Office, Mary Beth Provost said that it is federal law to provide ADA ramp. And we consulted with Jessica Engelman, City of Portland Historic Preservation Specialist. She informed us that in City of Portland, if such a case is not a subject for Historic Board, because if we can provide prefabricated ramp, if prefabricated ramp is used, then the Historic Board basically does not even consider this kind of a decision or dilemma. The prefabricated ramp can be used, so without the Historic Board approval. So my question was, can we use prefabricated ramp in this case?
Okay, John, I have to stop you again. The staff is telling me that it sounds like you've presented some new additional evidence.
That's correct. The conversation with Ms. Engelman and what the City of Portland allows, as well as the prefabricated office.
Did you hear what she said?
Okay. Okay. So
can you answer yes? Did you hear what she said?
I did hear.
Okay.
Yes. So so the HRB suggested that we do the ramp to the right side of the building, but the right side of the building is on different level. It's on ground level, and ground level has no connection to the residential level. Okay, only the staircase. So what sense it makes to do the ramp halfway, or actually quarterway, and later use the stairs? What solution is this if we cannot have access or egress from the main level? The ramp, again, the proposed solution to the right side, it's not a solution at all because it does not provide access or egress from the main level. We have 11 feet difference between the ground level where the ramp stops and the main level, which is the upper level, which is the main level of the house. My understanding is the ADA ramp supposed to access to the service floor, but we have 11 feet difference. So if we just do the ramp to the right door, what do we provide? That was my, I think it's a big misunderstanding here. But again, I don't know if there is a question about this or I have to elaborate on this, provide more evidence or whatever explanation. Also, I think there was a misunderstanding about the grade, natural grade for topography. With original design, we went from original survey, which was done, I don't know, 20 years ago. The site was full of green bushes. The first time I saw the site, I knew that there would be discrepancy between the provided topography and the site. After we cleared the site, we did the excavation. We have what we have, which was quite different than we had at the drafting board at the beginning. Okay, and so we have this nevertheless challenging situation that we have to access to the main level. And the way ADA ramp works is 12 inches horizontal ramp, 1 inch vertical gain. So for every foot, we're gaining only 1 inch. And because we are talking about 11-foot plus difference, the only solution is, of course, do so many turns around. Now, the question was, can we shorten the ramp? I said only if the city allows 1 to 10 slope. In some cases, the building official of the local building jurisdiction can allow reduced slope. But my understanding is nationwide by federal law, 1 to 12 is the most common slope required for ADA. So we did provide 1 to 12, asking, I'm not going to take on my shoulder for liability, but if the city approves steeper slope, 1 to 10, then we can shorten the ramp. Not necessarily eliminate those switches or turns around. But on the back, the ramp can be a little bit shorter. That's all. But basically, if the ramp is the only option, as I said multiple times, and why not? If I need to provide more evidence, we need to go back to Hrb. So we need this remand appeal. But if everything is understood, the elevator is not actually a possible, visible solution, practical solution from any point of view, then we can elaborate why ramp and why this slope, why on the right side, why we have to do so many switches and so on. I can elaborate, but I don't know in which point I need to work on or explain. So that's why there's no discussion. It's presentation of information, and after a few weeks, we find out if we are on the same understanding or not. So this is our challenge. So I don't know, in my time or later, I will have a chance to talk. If there is some different understanding of the situation and the problem, will I be able to answer any question, or we will find out the decision after a few weeks. But again, to recap, my understanding is from technical and code point of view and applicable laws, the ADA, if it is required, it's by means of egress in case of emergency and so on. Otherwise, people can go on steps, of course. But in case of emergency, as I said before, we need to provide the means of egress for the life safety of occupants.
Like that.
Only if there are some specific questions I can elaborate.
If you have questions, now would be a good time.
Anybody have questions?
Do not.
I have a question. So made the comment that there was a misunderstanding about the grade. So you designed the building for, had all the information about the grade.
Yes, there was a few misunderstanding about the site. First of all, the site was qualified or recorded as a geotechnical hazard zone.
Yeah, that's not a misunderstanding. That's a fact.
Yeah, so geotechnical hazard zone. So we had to hire independent geotechnical engineer. He evaluated the site, and along with the city staff and geotechnical consultant working for the city, they agreed that this is actually not a geotechnical hazard zone. And we can build just like any other building. Okay?
Just a second. All right.
So,
hang on just a second.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk just about the topography.
Which has to do with the ramp.
Which has to do with Commissioner McGrath's question. So I believe that during applicant's initial testimony, he said he knew there was a problem with topography, and then he continued on, and those statements are new. And then I believe the way he's answered the question with respect to surveys and who knew what then is all new. And so
let me retract the question. So I guess it isn't a geotechnical.
Correct.
Okay, so that's not a disputed fact, period. Okay, because I didn't understand the statement that there was a misunderstanding about the geotech, and I thought, I don't understand what that means. Okay.
I think what's important and what is in the record is that geologic hazard analysis happened. The result of that was to result in a changed design.
Okay.
And so this applicant had to come before the Hrb in order to deal with elevation change as part of that side door. That side door is air.
Right. In the drawing, it shows
as a result of the geologic hazard review. So they had to come back to the Hrb in order to get something to that door. The original proposal was a ramp to that door and then stairs to the back.
Right.
Then in the process, changed to ramp all the way up around the back.
But not use that.
The ramp will get you into that door, but that door, once you go in that door, you'll get there.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So you have to have an internal chair lift inside somehow there in order to get to the second floor, which I think is the appellant's point.
Okay, got it. You explained it way better than, yeah. Okay, is there anybody else that's going to be testifying? I don't have any other slips or notice.
I'm not sure if there's anybody online who wants to testify.
John, there aren't any more questions?
No more questions?
No.
Okay.
All right. So is there anybody else that signed up to testify?
So
I mean, for the applicant, excuse me, the appellant. Okay. Right. So we'll go to.
So can I add something?
Yes.
Okay. So again, option 2 or 3, if we still need to present more evidence supporting our case, then we obviously need more time and go back to Hrb unless everything is reasonably presented and understood. to grant us the ability to provide the access and egress for residents. But we are willing to work whatever it needs to be done, provided more evidence, more with expert witness, and so forth, basically to achieve what the owner requests and needs.
Not at this hearing, but. Okay. So we received some testimony. So thank you, John. So we received written testimony from one party.
Is there anybody from the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association who wishes to speak?
Mr. Buss, are you ready?
Yes, Commissioner McGriff, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Actually, am I able to be seen as well or just heard?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. Well, I'm getting an interesting nesting phenomenon sometimes. Can anyone else see that? That'll occur when the city commission speaks, when the video is pointed at you. There's no way to avoid it right now, but it's when the commissioners speak, it will echo or make a weird image there. Thank you, Mr. Wiley. I do see that I've got 5 minutes on the clock. I appreciate that since I'm appearing on behalf of the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Neighborhood Association for the year 2022. I also just happen to be an attorney, and some of my work includes land use work, not nearly as much as Ms. Richter, but it does inform some of my comments. And I just want to make clear, none of what I say is meant to be new evidence. None of what I say is meant to be new argument. We're relying on primarily our written testimony before the City Commission and before the Historic Review Board. The Neighborhood Association has submitted comments a number of times before the Historic Review Board. And in order to avoid going outside the record here, I will just say that the neighborhood has many, many thoughts on this project and this application. I could talk for a long time about issues with this project, but I will not, and instead focus on the issue at hand. One thing that struck me by the applicant's testimony is that it was hyper technical from a construction standpoint and did not at all address the standards under historic review under city code. The same is true of their written appeal, which, if I'm not mistaken, was a single sentence citing the entire ADA at the federal level, which is, the last time I looked at the ADA, it's hundreds of pages long. So that is not a specific appeal. There were not specific issues raised on appeal, and none of those issues, in fact, the issues were not only not raised before the City Commission, but they were not raised before the Historic Review Board. So I submit that really none of this has been properly preserved on appeal. And if I were in court, or if anyone was in court on an appeal based on what was submitted in writing by the applicant here, the judge would throw the appeal out of court and wouldn't listen to it. So I respectfully submit that this appeal is not developed. There's not a lot for the commission to consider here. City staff and the city attorney have done an admirable job of trying to divine what the appellant is actually getting at here, but I don't think, despite their best efforts, they're able to really pin it down because of the nature of the appeal and it being so broad. That is enough for this commission to deny the appeal and affirm the HRB, which is what the Historic Review Board is asking you to do. Which is what the Mclaughlin neighborhood is asking you to do, affirm the Historic Review Board here.
Yeah.
As far as the actual criteria regarding historic review, the Historic Review Board bent over backwards to accommodate this applicant. This is not the first time they've done that. And respectfully, this seems like a long-term bait and switch with regard to planning, and the Historical Review Board staff has done their best with this applicant. But over time, it's shown itself to be a boondoggle of a project. And while I'm sensitive and the neighborhood is sensitive to ADA access, this was a foreseeable issue that should have been raised before the Historic Review Board long ago with the initial application. And I'll point out that a 10-bedroom facility is not typical of what we consider a single-family residence, which is what the applicant has called that project most recently in tonight's testimony. So the neighborhood has a healthy amount of skepticism about the intentions and transparency from this applicant from the beginning. But I'll just go ahead and rest there. And I appreciate the commission's time as well as the staff's time. They've clearly spent a lot of effort trying to accommodate this applicant. And I think it's unfortunate that we all have to be here tonight, but I do appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Well, very much, Mr. Buss. Yes, yeah.
Just to, Mr. Buss did raise a couple of new facts. First, what would or would not happen in court is a new fact that the commission should not consider. And how the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association evaluates a 10-bedroom structure is in the record, but it is not an appeal issue for the commission consideration. Thank you.
Okay, we are now at, is there any rebuttal by the appellant? So you just have to get off mute, John, if you want to speak. There you go. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
Yes, yes, basically, I would like to say, just like from the beginning, after we learned from the owner that we need to provide a solution for her family situation, this is the only solution that we were able to see from a practical point of view, code point of view. Basically, I have no other options. I don't see any other options, but would love to discuss any suggestions, or I would appreciate the opportunity that we can develop and provide more evidence if we need to. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
So are there additional or final questions for the appellant? I just have one. So at this time, you've indicated that you have other evidence to submit, would like to. So why didn't you get this to the Historic Review Board? Why didn't you submit the information that they asked for?
Well, going from my experience, as I said, I never anticipated that this could be a problem, a challenge, because again, we worked with Jessica Engelman. She helped us with this project also. Maybe you remember her. She appeared in our behalf. And
No. John, my question is, why didn't you submit the evidence to the Historic Review Board?
In my mind, we presented, I was short and to the point. And I didn't know that we need to provide more material or more explanation.
Well, they did. They asked you for a list of stuff. They asked you for a whole bunch of stuff and it never got submitted. So that's one of my concerns.
I still don't understand what list or what we can present more.
Okay, so you don't understand what it was they asked you to submit?
That's right. I was thinking that what we said was adequate enough, but apparently not. So, so I guess if we need to, we will have to pursue this and elaborate on all the points.
We don't have anybody else that, okay. All right, well, I will close the public hearing and ask the commission to deliberate.
can you bring up the PowerPoint, the options,
So take
please?
it away, staff.
I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint, the options. We can review again, but.
If I may just offer a little reframing, I think it's important for the commission to understand that the ADA does not give anyone a free pass. You don't just get to build whatever type of ramp you want. There is certainly, ADA does encourage, accessibility, and the city has an obligation here to make every effort to provide access, but not in whatever design, in whatever with whatever siding, with whatever finishes, and whatever location that an applicant might prefer, unless they present evidence explaining why that option is only cost-effective option. And I think that we've heard some conclusions. There's been some conclusionary statements made HRB about that, but I don't think we have evidence. And so the ADA assumes a balance between preservation objectives, accessibility objectives, and then, and cost. And we just don't have enough information here to evaluate that. And that's what the HRB based its denial on. But I want to acknowledge that the ADA does encourage as much as we can providing accessible buildings, even when they're just private residents.
What? Fine.
I'll kick it off.
Why don't you kick off?
I'm prepared to disposition this here tonight. I'm not prepared to remand it, HRB. Anything I say that follows is a result of the reports that were submitted. Those reports specifically are the staff reports, the supplemental staff report, which is AP 21-0006 on January 22nd by Ms. Christina Robinson Gardner. On page 1, there's a lot of references to other things that we didn't talk about that were the reason for the HRB's decision, including the second and third to the last paragraphs on page 1, where the HRB found that the design of the proposed rear ramp elongated the structure, so it is no longer reflected a four-square inspired design when viewed from the side, and it goes on and on. So the second and third to the last paragraphs, specifically what I would say, I do agree that the appeal lacks specificity. I feel that the reports were thorough in their analysis. I see a project that varied significantly from as approved to as built. And as such, I would move toward option 1, which is deny the appeal and affirm the HRB decision on the basis of the reports submitted.
Thank you, Commission President McGriff. I do have a question for Ms. Richter. Is cost effectiveness an actual standard in the ADA?
Cost prohibitive, accessible solutions are not solutions.
Okay.
So a commercial grade elevator that costs more than $100,000 is probably not a solution. But there may be other solutions that this applicant did not explore. And, the design of this ramp also was not explored. Even if it would be this size, maybe its design was not explored there.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Because I'm just having a really hard time with the fact that those alternatives were not explored and presented to us and shown that there is an alternative route that is cost effective. So I think that there were just a lot of areas in this application where the needed information has not been given to us. And so I would agree.
Or whether, or whatever, I'm not sure where we are with that. It has to do with the ramp. In the record, there were a number of requests to submit information that would give the board some certainty that options to this particular design could be explored. And as I asked the question to the appellant, it was not apparent that they recognized that that was their opportunity to present alternative information. And just as staff said, just to say that it's too expensive is not grounds for not submitting information. So I appreciate the list that's on page 7 of the supplemental report that lists a number of alternatives that the applicant should analyze on remand. And some of those were questions that were already asked by the board, but the information was not ever forthcoming. That's where I'm having the problem, is that I would be willing to remand, but I don't have any evidence that if we remanded it, if I had the votes, that we would get that information from the applicant, because much of it has been asked and not submitted. So I'm still stuck between, is there a lack of understanding, because the applicant kept referring to a misunderstanding. Well, I'm not having any misunderstanding. I don't think the staff is having any misunderstanding. I think the applicant representative is the one that's having the misunderstanding, to not understand that there is criteria by which Commissioner O'Donnell pointed out that has not been addressed. And you can't, as staff stated, say, okay, this is what we want to do and we don't care about the rest of the stuff. I am just having a really, really, really hard time with this, because I think from what I can see, there are some possible alternatives. And I think that the Historic Review Board should have had the opportunity to adjudicate that in order for them to make a decision. And I believe they were not left with any other alternative but what they came up with. So that's kind of where I'm falling right here.
The Hrb report confirms what you just said. In fact, in one of the paragraphs, it says the Hrb concluded that the applicant had failed to show that the proposed ramp design was the only financially feasible. They've addressed.
Well, there's a couple of things. It's not only if it's financially feasible, but there weren't any other options suggested, such as, a different use of materials, such as, maybe doing a metal ramp that you can see through, because that side is extremely visible. And you can't just buy a bunch of bushes and stick it in front of it. It's still going to be there.
Well, I'm prepared to make the motion that I propose, which is choose option 1 for the reasons I propose. That option being the commission denies the appeal and affirms the HRB decision. That's my motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and yes, I need a little bit of advice from our attorney at particular. So on your alternatives, I'm going to look over here. I'm assuming you're talking about option one.
Yes, I stated.
So we don't need to come up with any additional findings. We have sufficient findings.
I would prefer this to be a temporary, a tentative decision, and we would return on the first meeting in March, which is March 2nd, for the adoption of findings.
And the reason for that is to give staff time to compose the finals.
I would like an opportunity to provide within the written decision an explanation of the M&A testimony. And I would like to clarify what is in the record and what is out of the record from what we heard tonight, because if this gets appealed, then the recording will go to the Land Use Board of Appeals, and we have to be able to redact things and make it clear that the things that are in the record and the things that are out of the record, because they're new. And I can explain that in findings, present them for the Commission's adoption on March 2nd. 2nd. Tony, maybe it's 6. Sorry.
Something.
I don't object to that approach. I just want to make it clear that my decision was made on the basis of the information that was presented
We do
only there in the staff reports. And I disregarded the other that was put forth tonight.
But you still need to put that in the record.
I'm fine with it. I'm just saying that where I stand.
I guess I just have one final comment before I call for the vote. Again, as you know, I'm struggling a little bit with this, but in any land use decision that we hear on appeal, we have to have, as you stated, sufficient information in order to either support or affirm or deny that. And based on the submitted record and the testimony by the appellant, I really didn't find any additional information that I could hang my hat on other than the last statement was, we would like to present additional information to work this out. I think you're saying to me, Commissioner O'Donnell, that there's been too many bites of the apple at this point in time, and that we don't have any additional information to make sufficient findings to approve this. So,
I'm saying what I said before, those reports are thorough in their analysis. They've done everything.
All right. Mr. Wiley, will you call the roll? So we have to amend the motion to bring this back to March.
So it'll be a tentative with Commissioner O'Donnell's indulgence. I believe it is, the motion is for option 1, deny the appeal and affirm the HRB decision. With the tentative decision, the staff will prepare findings and return for the Commission's consideration on March 2nd.
I so modify my motion to reflect what our attorney said.
And do we have a second? Confirm the second? Okay, so we're going to deny the appeal, tentatively deny the appeal subject to the review and approval of findings to be brought back to the Commission on March 2nd. So would you call the roll?
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
And Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Motion passes.
You want to take a quick 5-minute break?
I have a lot left.
I know we don't, but I need one. If we may, you may indulge me for the moment.
You're the chair.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm asking. I would appreciate just 5 minutes. So we will reconvene the meeting at 8:45.
right, we're back.
All right, we're back. All right, we are going to reconvene the meeting. Thank you so much. We will now move to item 9, which is general business. And we have a request already that came in subsequent to my request to move items 7A to 9A. And I believe that our fearless Director of Community Services, Kendall Reed, is on the call with us regarding this agenda item. So, Mr. Conkle, is Mr. Reed going to present this, or would you like to do it?
Mr. Reed will present his
Thank you so much. Good evening, Kendall Reed. How are you?
Good evening. Commissioner McGriff, Troy Bollinger, our vice chair, is present and would like to provide some comments on this particular matter about the PRAC bylaws.
Yes, I have the slip. So you go right ahead.
Okay. Well, on January 27th, the vice chair presented some recommendations in regards to modifying or revising some of the PRAC bylaws, particularly changing the term limits and eliminating term limits, the requirement for 1 year break after serving 2 consecutive terms, and also revising the requirement to send agenda items directly to staff. He requested that we also include the chair instead of staff to streamline communications, and then also revising public comment times. We currently have in our bylaws that 5 minutes are provided for public comment, which is different from most public meetings, and that was requested to be revised to 3 minutes. So I'm open and available for questions at that particular meeting. It was voted 8-0 by the committee to bring these revisions forward for approval by the City Commission.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Reed? Please jump right in. So we're at so talk about
No, we do receive requests for agenda topics before that meeting and sometimes after. But we do meet on a monthly basis, at the very least 10 days prior to the meeting, to discuss those agenda topics. One's presented by staff, and also any agenda topics presented by the PRAC committee or the public.
Okay, well, to that particular comment, in my opinion only, all agenda items should be submitted to the staff. This is an advisory committee. It is not a standalone committee. It doesn't really have any authority other than making recommendations to the commission or maybe the planning commission, and maybe if it involved HRB, that sort of thing. So it would seem to me that any agenda items would go through the staff, and you could consult the chair about that. But no other group that I'm aware of is having agenda items submitted to a chair. Even this group doesn't have that. It goes through staff and then comes back to whoever the commission is. So that's a concern that I would have right off the get-go. I believe you probably are aware that we received some correspondence from Ms. Maury, and I did go back and check Title II in the Municipal Code, and for some reason, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee is not listed whatsoever in that list of the committees, commissions, and organizations that we receive advice from. We do occasionally create ad hoc committees that come and go, so they're not going to be in the municipal code. So that is probably some oversight that happened in 1983. The information is suggesting that we probably better fix that. So I guess the question I would have that you can't answer, Mr. Reed, is that do we have bylaws for any of our other committees, commissions? Which ones?
I think we'd have to go back and look specifically. I'm aware the Planning Commission has bylaws.
I remember that.
I think that the CIC has bylaws. I'm not sure if HRP does or not. I'd have to go back and look off the top of my head.
Yeah, the only one I could think of was, I know Planning Commission has them. That's the only ones I could recall off the top of my head. So anyway, so I don't know how you feel about that comment that I made, Mr. Reed. But Mr. Morrow, do you have anything you'd like to add before we call up Mr. Bollinger? Mr. O'Donnell?
I do not.
All right. Come on up, Troy. You know the drill.
Yeah, I've done this a couple times.
Oh, at least one.
Yes. Can you hear me okay? Is this on?
Thank you.
If I could add a little bit of context and
So
Kendall.
don't forget, what do you do first?
Oh, sorry, I'm Troy. You already introduced me, so I just kind of skipped it. But no, that's fine. I'm Troy Bollinger, member of Oregon City in the Mclaughlin district and chair for the PRAC. So to add a little context, and if I apologize, Kendall, a typo in here that I caught, just so you all have the accurate information, is the second item, Roman numeral 6, where it says proposed removing staff representative. I believe, and Kendall, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost certain that, actually I could look at it right here, I have the bylaws. It actually says, and it's just written, I think it's incorrect in the staff report. It says submitted to staff representative 5 working days, and the proposal is submit to PRAC chair 10 working days. Really 2 different pieces in there. We meet about 10 days prior to the meeting. So to accept agenda items 5 days prior is after we've assembled the agenda. Now, certainly there's changes and last minute changes, and that's certainly acceptable, but I think 10 days makes a whole lot more sense. In addition, the intent with this is, as I believe the PRAC chair should be the one facilitating agenda items from PRAC members. It's not intent here is not to sidestep staff, and it's not to require staff to send everybody to the chair, but rather take that burden of assembling all those items away from staff. They got plenty to do. And so the chair can handle those. And then Kendall and I had a discussion as well. This is the bylaws, so it doesn't set out every process and every communication that goes on. That's not its intent. But Kendall and I have an understanding that anything I receive as the chair is going to immediately be forwarded to him and Justin, not waiting for that meeting, and anything he receives forwarded. So that process is in place, and we have been and will continue to follow that. This just sets a little more formality of kind of where they should go. That's the purpose there. The other typo, insignificant, I would suggest, and Kendall, correct me here if I'm wrong, we only have 8 of the 9 positions filled in PRAC, but 1 person was absent and did not vote. So I believe the vote was unanimous 7-0. Not that that changes much, but for the record, I believe it's 7-0. Term limits, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Right now, a PRAC member has to take some time off. We have struggled over the last 3-4 years and have enough members on PRAC. We were down to, I think, 6 members of 9 positions. And to tell somebody that wants to serve that they can't because of a term limit, I think does everybody, including the city, a disservice. Keeping in mind that these positions are appointed by the mayor. So if the mayor feels whoever the mayor is at the time feels that this individual needs a break or needs time in a different committee, then he or she would have that opportunity to not appoint them. So I think taking that away just gives us the option of letting someone serve who wants to serve and not crippling ourselves by having a willing participant who. So that was the term limit. Then the minutes, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. On the agenda, up at the top, it says our bylaws allow 5 minutes. At the bottom of the agenda, it says public comment is 3 minutes. So even on our own agenda that the public sees, it's contradictory. And everywhere else across the board in public meetings is 3 minutes. Why we have 5 in the bylaws, I don't know, but the intent there was just be consistent with what everyone expects. When you come to a public meeting, you kind of assume and expect your 3. And then for someone who knew they get 5, someone feels advantage. I just think that makes a lot of sense to bring that in line. And then just by way of a little background, these all proposals, or all 3 of these, came from me. I was looking through the bylaws, knew we needed some cleanup. I proposed them, gave them to the committee members in advance, offered them the opportunity to propose, to add their own ideas, agenda, so we could consider the entire bylaws at the same time. And nobody else had any that they suggested. So that's why they're all mine, not for any other reason. Nobody else had any. And then we all discussed it, voted on it, and it was unanimous. And I got 27 seconds. For me to be early and rare, so,
So what's the difference between a formal agenda item? I mean, it's just an agenda item, formal or informal.
Where are you seeing some of this formal?
I don't understand that.
Are you
number 6
on the bylaws on the proposal?
Under number 6 meetings and then sub 6. You have formal agenda item. Are there any agenda items that are not formal?
No, that language is taken right from the bylaw.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Well, you could just say, say agenda item.
Yeah, we could scratch that as part of it as well.
So this has nothing to do with you as the current chair. So again, I feel like the fact that if there's an agenda item, so I actually, and I'll use myself as an example. I asked for an agenda. I contacted Mr. Reed, asked if a certain item could be put on the agenda for PRAC because he's the staff contact. To me, that's where that should go. He's the staff. Chairs are going to come and go. He's not going. The staff's not going anywhere. So I think that anything should be submitted to any citizen should submit something to the staff or commissioner, whoever, doesn't matter. I mean, I submitted as a citizen.
And this proposal doesn't preclude.
Yeah. So
it would allow for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is. Based on my always imagine that was specified.
Right.
Staff. I don't have they're getting it, but hey,
in consultation with the chair.
Something, but patch that out. And I'm only reading the red lines. I didn't go back and read the bylaws. There's some of bylaws.
No, I read the whole thing.
Staff, but if that's the only reference,
Are you saying if that's the only reference, agenda items or staff responsibility?
Well, there's 2 for me. There's number 6 and number 4. So normally committees establish their own secretary. So why is the staff responsible for recording minutes? But since you're doing it on Zoom, I guess you can record it and that takes care of that. I think we kind of have a dilemma here. Ms. Maury is correct.
Well,
we should probably have staff bring back a resolution to add the PRAC to the some sort of resolution to add the PRAC back to the municipal code before we consider doing any of this other stuff, so that is actually legitimized. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.
Well, I think you can still approve or ask for a vision of the bylaws, whether it's code or not. I would agree the code needs to be looked at. However, that's a completely separate issue than the 3 items we're proposing.
Well, no,
That's
she's
unrelated.
talking about a charter. This is in the municipal code, Title II.
What's that?
I'm suggesting that that staff bring us back a resolution to put PRAC into the municipal code.
And I would not disagree with that. I'm simply saying that's a separate topic than what we're discussing tonight.
So it's going to be at the pleasure of the commission on what they want to do. But I would recommend that we keep 6 the way it was and not the way it's being proposed. The other things, I have no problem. Go ahead, just jump in.
That's the question. I understand. Just there.
Well, and if I can on that.
So hang on, this was
I thought you were done with that
question for Kendall.
Well, I was going to say, I think that Kendall can share his opinion, but I want to make sure it's known that Kendall and I have talked about that. His opinion is in line with yours. I'll let him say it his way. But we had voted on this, bring to the commission, and then we had that discussion. So we were in a position to bring it to the commission as the committee had requested. That's why we're here. But I'll let Kendall tell you his own opinion on that. But it certainly is mine, and I'm not opposed.
Does anybody have any further questions for Troy? Then, okay, thank you, and then we'll talk to Kendall. Not trying to put you on the spot, sir.
Oh, not at all, not at all. We want to give people as many opportunities to communicate with us as possible, and we want to make sure that we're accessible. So we have no issue or problem having people contact me and present agenda items. So that's not a concern that we have.
You don't have a problem with it. You have a problem with.
No, I don't. I don't have a problem with the chair getting it as well.
So we can. So my yes, because I know there are bylaws. I know that when we set up as a past commission, there was a whole lot of conversation about committees and how committees are run and how committees are under the umbrella of the city and so on and so on and so on. For years, we've discussed this. There was a lot of changes with committees when we decided that this was going to be, similar as the conversation was with CIC about how committees fall under this umbrella. I know there's bylaws for other committees, including the Arts Commission and others. My guess is that's a consistent statement on all of those bylaws, and it's there for a reason. And so that's what I would like to see, because I'm assuming that was put there for a specific reason by staff because of the way that we set up that system as a conversation with actually multiple commissions. So I guess I just need to really find out if, that is a consistent thing that's in all the other bylaws and kind of reminding myself, how we got there before we just change it. I don't really have a problem with it if it's just worded, submitted to PRAC or submitted to staff. That could be submitted to the staff and the chair at the same time for all I care, but I think there's a reason that it says that. So I'm glad that was caught because I didn't catch it the first time.
Well, you just use myself in this example. When I was chair of the Planning Commission, the draft agenda was set by the staff. Usually we chatted and said, oh, by the way, we're going to have this, this, and this on, and we know that this is coming. And then that's how it went. And that's kind of how it's operated for all the committees that I've ever served on. And I would like this one to be as consistent as those. So I don't have a problem with us moving ahead with approving this resolution subject to that change and bringing back, because the change to the municipal code now, it's not land use, so that can come directly to us, correct? So could we, in a couple of weeks, prepare a resolution to add PRAC to whatever the next section is after the one that we just saw in the code, and then do this at the same time?
I think it takes an ordinance to amend the code, not a resolution.
Yeah, whatever's we need, just could we bring back just a brief amendment to the municipal code ordinance section 2, adding Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, whatever section that 27 or 32 or whatever it's going to be in there.
But I just want to point out that I believe that list are things of their bodies make decisions, not advisory bodies.
No, Natural Resources doesn't make decisions. They make their advisory. Transportation Advisory Committee is advisory. CIC is advisory. The only two that have any legal authority to make a decision is, as you know, planning and Hrb and us.
I guess getting back to Commissioner Smith's. So I think what's interesting about that is I think that we're starting to we started to see an erosion of how we have traditionally run committees. Typically, right. and I think this starts with the actual city commission bylaws and how the Oregon City is set up under a city manager form of government.
Right.
I, as a city manager, can put things onto the agenda. 3 or more commissioners can add things to the agenda. Right. The mayor can organize the agenda, but does not say, I want this item on in their sole discretion as the mayor.
Right.
So that's how I think we've historically always functioned, is that the staff responsible for whatever committee it was would deal with bringing items that had to be brought, or that a majority of that group said, we want to review this, work on this, whatever. With CIC, actually, we saw kind of a divergent where the chairperson prepares the agenda and presides over all meetings. So that was kind of the first
they really don't.
Situation where, you know, things didn't go through staff anymore in terms of creating an agenda. And so I personally believe that things should go through staff. We are responsible for these committees, and just because you're the chair, you shouldn't get to pick. You have anywhere from 5 to 9 other members up there, and we operate under Robert's rules, and majority 50+1 sets decisions or recommendations or whatever that may be. So this is kind of a philosophical, high-level discussion, but you're starting to see it change a little bit from how even this commission can function in terms of setting an agenda. The commission would like us to bring back an ordinance adding the Parks and Rec Advisory through the code. I need 2 more votes.
Right. We need to vote on it. That's why I said we need to recommend that we bring this back. But
well, and that's why I brought it up, because I remember having extensive conversations about how committees run and how they might have changed since the last time I was on back. So I needed that update to figure that out. But
yeah, Mike. I mean, Tony, you articulated it better than I could. But yes, that's how they have traditionally been run. Again, we have advisory committees and they advise. So the chairs, whoever they are, run the meeting. And usually there's always a time during that meeting, oh, by the way, do you have anything you want to add to the next month's agenda? Is there some topic that you know, and then that gets put on the minute. And then the next month, the staff adds it to the agenda if there's time and whatever. And that's the way it's worked across the board. And I think that is a good system, because it doesn't really matter who the chair is. They're running the meeting. The staff is helping to direct and help the committee, as well as any of the other boards that we have. So across the board, it's been fairly consistent. I think that we should stick with that. It seems to work. And again, even the quasi-judicial bodies that we have, which are 3, again, as you stated, we don't set the agenda. We say, oh, gee, could we add this to the work session item? You add it to the list. We talk to you about how to get there. So that's the process that I would like us to support and continue to support that.
Thank you, Commissioner McGriff. When were the CIC bylaw revisions that you mentioned, when were those implemented?
Not too long ago.
It looked like, July 15, 2020 was, I think, the latest change.
Okay.
That's the resolution that I have in front of me right now.
Okay. I don't have any problems with the first and the third one, but I agree with Commissioner McGriff. Just given the structure of government that we have, I think one of the main reasons why we have staff there is for purposes like the ones that is mentioned in the bylaws. And so I would not be inclined to change that. So I'll leave it at
So can we suggest that resolution 2210 come back with those changes? That one change? That'd be, is there a motion on that?
Does it need to come back, or can we
Do we
make the
just
change and
motion
just
to
do it and be
approve
done
it
with it?
without that change?
Which would be easier, Uncle? Clean resolution or?
I think as long as we're just clear, I think we're talking about subsection 6, number 6.
Yes.
The formal agenda items must be submitted to the staff representative 5 working days prior to the meeting. So
Can we just say agenda items form? I don't know what that.
Whatever you'd like.
Just say agenda items should be submitted to the staff, whatever. Do they want 10 days or they want 5 days? Yeah, I have no problem with it. Vetted with the chair. Yes. 5 days. Do we post the track agendas?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
All right, so do we have a motion?
I don't want to try to re-say what you just said.
I think the motion would be to approve with the proposed change to subsection 6, number 6. Agenda items must be submitted to the staff representative 10 working days prior to the meeting date.
Period.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we amend resolution 2210. And we have the roll, please.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, then can we have a motion to bring back a resolution at staff convenience to add the PRAC to section 2 of the Oregon City Municipal Code? I mean, an ordinance, excuse me. Sorry, I said it again. Resolution's on the brain. Okay, well, I'll move that we ask staff to bring back an ordinance adding the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to the list of committees, boards, and commissions in Title 2 of the Oregon City Municipal Code.
Might be a point of order, but the chair will make the motion. Okay.
No, the chair can't make a motion.
Right. I'm just acting as it.
But what, do you want to wait until you've got a different chair?
No, I want to do it tonight so we can get the ball rolling and get this resolved so it gives them their legitimacy. So could one of you please make a motion? You don't agree with we should add this to the code? Yes, you do agree. We should. Yes, Tony.
I was just going to say, I mean, I guess maybe this is probably a discussion I need to have the attorney. I mean, the PRAC was established via resolution. Now, would it be better if it was codified? I'm not sure what
I don't think the legitimacy of the PRAC hinges on whether or not it's in the code or not.
Agreed.
But
it cleans it up.
Consistency, I mean, for some reason we put a lot in there.
Consistent with everything else that we've done as indicated previously by the city manager. Everybody else is in there. Why are they not in there?
I would move with the same motion that the chair made.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to ask staff to bring back an ordinance at their convenience to add the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, the list of boards, commissions, committees in Title 2 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Abstain.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
and Commissioner Adamaro.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Conkle, it's back to you.
The only communication I have tonight is I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate Aquila Hrb. I've selected her and she's accepted as our new Community Development Director for the City of Oregon City.
Thank you.
I think she, her expertise, her experience, both as a community development director previously, as the interim here in Oregon City, as well as a long planning career in the region, working in jurisdictions similar to ours. I think she brings a excellent approach to communicating with the public, to how she approaches stakeholders with different viewpoints. So just really look forward to working with her and all her expertise that she will bring both for our citizens, but also for our staff and as part of my executive. So just really excited to have her and I look forward to working with you.
Well, Tony, if you're happy, we're happy.
Good to hear.
My dear commissioners, do you have any exciting news that you would like to report under communication? Anything exciting, interesting that you think that we all need to know? Mr. O'Donnell saying no, he has nothing exciting and new to report.
Well, you said exciting, so I'm saying no.
Oh, okay. Well, you can use your own definition of exciting. Mr. Morrow, we're glad that you're back, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'll take the time to do it. We had an I-205 tolling diversion C4 subcommittee meeting today. And I usually would wait until a work session to discuss this, but it was interesting because they did finally tell us which range of the tolling rates they are looking at. Because they have completed or they have gone through a substantial portion of their tolling study. And so I asked basically, well, if you did a study, then you had to make certain assumptions about what those ranges might to come to the traffic might be better or worse in certain areas. And so the range they gave me, which of course is all subject to the OTC's decision, but the range they gave me was 60 cents to $2 at the peak time. So when we were thinking about the amount of gantries that they have there, one could imagine a scenario where you are taking a short drive and at peak hours and being charged $10 for your trip.
$10?
I mean, if you're going at peak hours and...
Is it per mile?
No, at the gantries.
Oh, okay.
And then the other thing that we discussed is our big concern here in Oregon City is that of the economic impacts, given that downtown Oregon City is directly adjacent to this proposed area, and they have not given that information yet. And then one more piece of information is they did give us a little map of intersections that would benefit and intersections that would not benefit. And the intersections that were benefited were represented by green squares. And you will not be surprised to know that the Oregon City region had no green square.
I'm shocked. Shocked.
We will continue to learn more as the study information comes out, and I will keep you all up.
Did anybody attend the work sessions that they had online? Because they were both the 15th and 16th. I had no time to go to them. It just was bad for me, and I wanted to attend. Did you attend either of those?
No.
Nope. Okay.
I'll say this, their public relations department, the ODOT public relations department is working overtime. And if you want to see a skewed report, they talk about the reduction in traffic on 205, but they sure don't talk about the impact on the diverted traffic to the city streets.
When is the reduction in traffic supposed to be?
Oh, no, they published a number, they got a number, but they don't talk about at the expense of that traffic being diverted to these other streets. So
I will tell you, once I had to go to the airport at about 11:30 p.m., there was not really much traffic on 205, but that's not peak. So can you explain to the public, because if they're listening, they don't know what the grand trees are. We're talking about the entry points to where the toll.
Correct. That it, yeah. I don't think there's further.
Right, so where would those, where they potentially say they might be?
Well, that's something I don't know off the top
Okay,
of my
because
head.
if you're saying, you said it might cost me $10 if I take a short trip.
Well, that was a point that was made by Mayor Jules Welkers of Westland. She pointed out that with the peak hour rate of $2, it could be a substantial cost.
So I could go from Oregon City over to Stafford and then, so that's 1, 2, 3, coming back, okay?
I mean, it's just a hypothetical.
Yeah, hypothetical, okay. Ooh, yeah, okay. Thank you for that. I don't have anything. So anything else from the illustrious staff out here? Anything? Okay, all right. Well, I will then, if your permission, gentlemen, adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Not a world's record, but